routine. She's published fiction and nonfiction in numerous journals, including The Collagist, Drunken Boat, McSweeney's, Waxwing, and the list goes on. Her short story collection, With Teeth, was selected as a winner of the 2017 Many Voices Project and was published in 2019 by New Rivers Press. Paige Buffington is originally from Tehachapi, New Mexico. She earned a BFA in creative writing and an MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts, focusing her MFA in poetry. She's currently an elementary school teacher, and we just heard before we all started that Paige's school year runs nearly through the end of June. So let's all give her some sympathy and courage and strength. She's the recipient of the Truman Capote Fellowship, and her work has also appeared in numerous journals, Literary Hub, Connotation Press, Taoist Journal of International Poetry, and others. Her poem, All-American Poem, published in Narrative, was named the best Western poem by Western Writers of America for 2016. And in her free time, she's working on her first book of poetry. So give a big welcome to everybody. And I want to turn it over to Esther and Connie, and I'll join you again on mic during the Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I'd like to talk just for a minute or two about the origins of this book. And all of the editors were committed in their various ways to promoting Diné literature. And I was at San Juan College, which is a border town. The reservation, Diné Nation, Navajo Nation, is just to the west of us. And we had in San Juan College, about 33% of our students were Native. And of those, most of those were Diné people. And my area was American Indian literature and Diné literature. So of course I always taught, whether it was a composition class, a literature class, any class I had, I was always teaching Diné writers. I taught a lot of Esther Boleyn, and she very graciously came down and came to classes. And Lucy Tapahanso, if I would get her right before Shipwreck Fair, we could get her a few times, which was just wonderful. And so after teaching Lucy's Hills Brothers Coffee, after one class, a young Diné man came up to me, and he had grown up on the reservation. He had gone to high school at Kirtland High School, which is near the reservation. And he said, I didn't know there were Diné writers. I said, what? I said, where'd you go to high school? He said, Kirtland. I said, they didn't teach you Diné writers? He said, no. I said, who'd they teach you? Hemingway, we call the great whites, Hemingway, Steinbeck, and Faulkner, with all due respect to those great writers, but they're not Diné. And so that sparked something in him, and it sparked something in me. So I talked to Jeff about it, my dear colleague, who at NAU I know had also a nice population of Diné students, and he had already gone ahead and put together readings. So he was a step ahead. And we discussed, should we do something more with this? So we asked Esther. Well, of course, Esther said, yes, we've got to do more with this. And this is an idea that we can live with, that will do some good. And so then Esther said, but I think we need Anthony Webster, who is a linguistic anthropologist. He's written two really important books. One is on intimate grammars, and the other is Navajo poetics. And it's so beautiful if you love language and if you want to know the nuances of Diné. It's beautiful. So anyway, that's how the book started. And I would like to add just a little note, is that young man who came up to me, who didn't know there were Diné writers, went on his own personal journey, ended up going to school, ended up at IAIA, 4-year degree, ended up at IAIA Masters, and he is in our anthology. It's Byron Aspis. Esther?
Yeah, everyone. You know, as I am listening to Jeff and Connie talk, I am, you know, really in awe of how number one, this book actually came together, you know, and the work that's in there and the heart. And I'm so pleased that Paige and Natanya are joining us tonight. You know, it's really important to celebrate the writers in here. You know, one of the things that we've been talking about and engaging recently as we're putting and promoting the book is the idea of what a Diné poetics is. And, you know, Jake Skeets, who I think is here with us as well, coined the term Dinetics. And, you know, so we're offering something really just new in the sense that we're at the point now where we have enough Diné writers who are willing to, you know, be courageous and take risks with the literary arts, right? And they're really willing to engage with the English language, and they're willing to engage with their own identity and be vulnerable. And it's so humbling because you when you read this, you really get to know them, and you get to just sit with them and just engage in that. And you know, every time I read any entry in here, I'm just in awe. I mean, I really fall in love more with who I am and with my tribe and the fact that we're still here, right? I think that's the biggest thing that always really amazes me. So we're breaking ground in the literary arts, and I think we're also, you know, breaking ground in the idea of literary analysis as well. You know, because I think that's something that still we were unsure about what our participation was in that arena. But I think now this book has kind of really opened that door to that. And so I'm so thankful for my friends Jeff and Connie and Anthony, that they were willing to go on this journey, that we were all willing to go on this journey together, because I think we all grew as people, and we all were able to sacrifice and produce this book that it just formed itself. It really wasn't, it's not ours, you know? And I love that. I love that it's a gift for everyone. So I just wanted to acknowledge that at the beginning, that this is a really unique book, and it requires time, and it really requires also conversation and exchange, sharing, like it should be shared, you know. And I think that's the essence of the Diné poetics, is that just making the space. And I think as a people, we're really patient about that. And so I just want to welcome you all here. Again, I'm super humbled by everyone who's here. Thank you.
I'd like to then turn, Esther, I was going to ask you to pick up reading, but do you want to round out the readings?
Oh, thanks. So I do want to honor someone in the book who's no longer with us, Greg Coho, who I think is just a treasure. And I got to know a little bit about him, mostly through his visual art. And so I'm going to read the poem that he has in here that I think, you know, when I read it, and I soak in all of its imagery and its rhythm, you know, it really is foundational for the writers that came after him. So his poem is called Awaken Me, Red House Born Again. 1. Image maker dippers, Tocito raindrops, must make believer, yet as mythic in this fallow eye. Bename me his only newborn, midst reminders, rusted and hallowed skull, he kindles magic mind of cross-legged fetishes. So might I bridge nomadic moods across crazier eyes. Wisdom he talks in robin beauty, from mica meadow away. So come shade rainbowed brow and form forth thunder's teardrops he spits. I sip, squint, sift, swift, whence eaglet verses call, whilst unknowing sensation blindfolds with dirty instincts, remind me odic memoirs, waken a while from salty nightmares ago, and begin selfish souls, behold, befool the true blue owlish, with white man wishbone and bear his reincarceration, kissing horny stares in a looking glass, cosmos cleared his secret sleep. You say we betray Navajo grandfathers, 'cause coyote poetress is our only bittersweet seer. 2. Joyous is veil voice from carcass cradle, re-echoing hail-stoned Hogan, calling me back like lame lamb romps into trickster's passion. 3. Horned toad at prey I caged, red antway, anasaza at play, I harmony. Since two tiptoes, too few, retracing abalone alleys in eclipse, he who rhymes wind-eaten wings, slung a sinew string of emetic effigies, basalt bones fingertip, angelic lip of dawn bearer, oncoming for flesh warmth, wink erotic pass, at night long notion he greets anywhere. Come, suckle, honeysuckle, plumes, and barbed wire twist, let alight straws of borrowed bones. 4. Over grape sweet sweats of soot shoulder, I thumb flick each yellow word of Tortolina teach, crinkling porcelain chins she wheezes, what hellish way, I'd sharpen my Christmas pencil. Remember the 10 tastes from painted panes of January promises, since thawed by hummingbird hunger. Whoever mistakens a fawn fete at slate saliva, but memorized my metaphors, may ne'er die. 'Twas that boarding school serenader who worships missing moons with dime store wreath left behind by coward creator, drifting by in-stone blind self-nests, dearest at apple red breath, Sabbath rumors arisen, one tooth grin of urban Indian. 'Tis why I weep behind cornhusk mask of fire dance clown. Cuss me coyote jokes. But could two-dimensional tongue air let me laugh in Navajo English? 5. Unearth saltbrush figurine, unchanging salamander mellows with deepest sorrows. Shaman struts stupor this missing morn, sewing acorn agates into resin rivulet so clearer, through taboo teardrops in slow flow. When olden omen insist moonstruck luck Hearken to surprising, uprising, essence of eternity. Strew medicine quartz, far fossils, fields, where isnas us, tillers crowd, cursing obsidian owlets in oblivion, night mirror in ceramic boots, returns buffalo horned war shields, his so what expression enlightened me for uncertain cure, magic magpies ricochet, sewing black ribbon or chuska contours of evil eye in disguise, whereupon lyrist ladybug shall scan like crippled crow can. So he's got about 8 more stanzas in the sequence. And so I just gave you a sampling of his work, which again, I can't emphasize the early poetics that he really established and that really branched off into many of the writings that we have now. And so I definitely encourage you not only to read and enjoy his work. So he's one of those dynamic artists in that he wrote poetry. He has a short fiction piece in here, and he was also a painter and printmaker. So he did many mediums very well. And I'll go ahead and read one of my poems that I was really glad to include in here. And when Jeff and I were talking about what selection of writing I should include from my work, it was fun discussing with him, who I'm always thrilled that he teaches my work. And he was really, he encouraged me to include this one, which is called Emergence. 1. She was born out of his cuss words and spittle. Probably urine-matted floors gave essence to his character, and now to hers, pumped through umbilical blood, her teeth grinding down his bad habits, his laugh with deceiving smile, a possible caress right before he guts, Ruby's mother with words emerging from the bottom of his heel. When Ruby met her mother, the only roots she could plant were bitter and twisted and contagious. From Ruby she wails. 2. I often wonder which easy street he emerged. Mother only calls him fast car. That's all I remember, Mother says passively. It was that kind of love, you know, that some way kind of connection. That is how you were created. My bet is a caprice, a Chevrolet Caprice, deep, strong blue, not too green, solid blue with maybe some glitter. There was sparkle. From what info I can squeeze out of Mother, there was sparkle. Perhaps it was his eyes, that mixed blood blue sparkling through his eyes. Or maybe it was his blue jeans with that just right fit sparkling from his highly polished pro rodeo silver buckle with real gold trim. I have seen that kind before, with pretty smile to boot. Maybe it was the smile. How about a gold rim smile, sparkling from across the powwow arena? I hope he was at least a lead singer. I hope from up north. I always wanted to go to Canada. Perhaps there I will find him, that fast car that got away or ran away. Whatever the case, I learned my lesson from that sparkle so potent and tight, bound into a confined space of beauty, caustic with the least amount of heat. My body still glows from that explosion. Mother and fast car, what a sight. 3. My birth began at 32, from water to water. When mother was ready to give birth, a consuming heat rushed her body. Being in the middle of winter, folks thought she was crazed, bobbing in and out of the waves on the beach, naked and alive with motion. People snapped photos. An indigenous woman returns to ocean homeland, one headline read. Indian woman commits suicide on beach was a popular thought. The salt water, the mews from the waves were her doulos. All she says is easy street. It's as if I just swam out of her womb into the arms of another sweet caress. One photo immediately after my birth, mother is just laughing in bliss, watching me swim, still connected. 4. I am still haunted by the voice or the hand, the one that slams heads into dresser drawers, shoulders into doorways, hearts into heavy balls of clay, and the pounding pulsed from the solid mass it created, not a sparkle of life in sight. Just a story that shivers me in my boots. Old man Jones said he knew the man mother called fast car. He'd begin, from up north, I believe. The year he told me that story, I started to learn "O Canada," the Canadian national anthem. I sang in the shower, on the school bus, when I was alone. Mother looked at me a bit strange, and I always thought I pulled one over on her. And she'd just smile, thinking I was working on a school project. I even bought one of those Canadian flags, the kind with the Indian man covering part of the maple leaf. AIM was big then. So on Independence Day, I sure raised that flag from our front porch. Mother never did budge on offering any fast car info. So I quit singing and packed away that flag. By then it occurred to me, mother probably never understood geography and my need to locate myself on someone's map. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Esther. It's beautiful. And I'm so happy you shared some of Gray's work with everyone. He's a figure that has fascinated me since we started working on this project. And just this week, I'm learning a lot more about him, digging into some of his rare works that are hard to find. My library is helping me locate some of those. I wanted to invite Natanya now to read. And I introduced, if you joined us late, I introduced Natanya earlier. She's an assistant professor of English at Colorado College and the author of this short story collection, With Teeth. And I'll put some information in the chat about that. Natanya.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Jeff. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me and putting this together. And I appreciate, especially having it come out. I think this last year has been so powerful and important. Not being able, I'm in Colorado, and not being able to go visit family, to see my mom. All of those things have been, so hard, and hearing such, terrible loss and news. And so I've turned to this collection quite often just to hear something familiar, and to to be placed somewhere, to kind of be removed from wherever I am to this new place. And I'm just so honored to have something in here as well. And I also want to say that usually when there's a kind of needed issue of some sort, it's my nonfiction that gets in there. And so I was really delighted to have a fiction piece picked up, mostly because my fiction is maybe a little bit, more experimental or weird, so it doesn't always end up somewhere where people read it in anthology. I'm going to be reading from the story in here, it's a longer story, so I'm just going to be picking a couple different parts to get to the end, and then kind of read the end here. In the Dream of Waking a Weaver is what it's called. And it's about a woman who has a family reunion to go to and is anxious about not knowing all of the relatives and their stories and not remembering them. So I'll read a tiny part of this kind of anxiety that she has. Her name's Clea. Many times Clea had sped through Navajo land listening to her mother's stories. Her mom never took a breath from talking at her. Back there is your Aunt Bess's first hogan with Raj Cowboy. And your grandfather walked me through this field, corn and watermelon before the easement. And Cousin Rita lived here, but not for long, not too long, I think. Those stories crowding Clea for hours, never hearing one specific family member's life story, and no resting places between time, people, or events. She had stepped on the gas harder, hoping to speed through the area, speed to a destination with only one story. She at her uncle's with her mom, the new puppy litter, Sandy and talkative, cousin's baby boy quiet with a wide reach and strong hands for pulling hair. No more winding and racing through her mom's stories, no more asking again to which her grandfather's 16 brothers a cousin belonged, no more sensing of riffs and bit lips and mental walkouts when other members of the family were mentioned or spotted near town as if they had stepped out of an ether of shame or past slights or lost journeys. So one of the things that Clea decides to do is to establish an area in the reunion to kind of catalog people to keep track of everybody. So this is just a short description of what that's like. In the corner of the conference room was a type of prison. It was her idea, and no one, not her mother, not her closest auntie, or most outspoken cousin, suggested she not do it. She was resentful when she looked at that corner, with its long blue sheet hanging from the wall, and to the side of it, a slouching table with her newly purchased clipboard. She wanted everyone's pictures, one at a time, name on the clipboard, all the names given, assumed, teased, and changed, corralling the data, the dates, and places of birth when available. But no one went to the corner, and no one asked about it. And where we're going to move into the story now is that she has left that area after seeing a couple of relatives and is home with her mother and has been having some hard time sleeping and wakes up thinking about, this desire to still have family. One of the things that has happened during this visit with family is that she met a young boy kid who's either adopted or, she's unclear of how he's brought into a family, who's raising him and why. And she's kind of seeing something in this kid who kind of doesn't want to be there either. So I'll read from this moment when she wakes up and she thinks about the boy and then to the end. No, she wanted something organic, some way of remembering that her mother seemed to have, some way of grasping these histories and planting them inside her to let them grow and show their own signs of pollination. Clea wanted to be an earth thing, something of soil and water, of coated and bursting cells, and of light-made, force-made, trembling, growing branches, like a fucking family tree, she said aloud. The boys' forced inclusion matched her own, both of them forever in rooms of voices murmuring, and something of a singer, sometimes a singer out of nowhere, like her grandmother's blind and half-paralyzed sister would sing, the middle of a conversation, the middle of a car ride, a tremble song, The young boy and Clea never knowing what is going to happen next. Do they shut up and listen? Do they sing along? Should her younger sister stop giggling? And instead, looking out the car window, heads pressed to the cold glass, watching the long song of sand and blushing pink rock, the occasional curious horse looking back at them, and the way Clea would yank at the old wagoneer's window handle and stick her head out as they neared her grandmother's home, yell at the dogs to stay clear from the tires, and hop out before the car came to a complete stop. She and that now and always family boy sharing a planet, sharing a sun. In the dining room of her mom's house, Clea scribbled the young boy's name and the names of the people he was with on a note card and tacked it to the wall. She included Shadeja, the goat, on the corner of the card. She began shuffling the rest of the note cards until another name came to her. Clea wrote it down and tacked it to the wall. As the names started piling up and more details from the last 4 days popped into her head here and there, she wrote everything on cards and tacked them close to a name or in another section of unknowns. Someone had new shoes the color of asphalt and pink neon. Another had dimples that threatened to swallow the rest of the young girl's face. On a note card, the types of smiles, smirks, full and lipped, the smells, hay, coffee, the distinct smell of freshly printed newspaper print, tobacco, rose perfume, flower, and cedar, the overhead words and phrases, the woman that always nodded, the man that was always leaning, the other man that would take her hand, but instead of shaking it, would hold it with both of his hands, as if to hold her rather than greet her. All the partial handshakes, the soft hellos, the names, so many boarding school names, Luther, Jermaine, Dorothea, Irwin, Neil, Laverne, and then many goats, Nez, Yazi, Tapaha, Singer. Her purple marker ran out of thick ink-soaked lines, and Clea rushed to find a red one, a black permanent one. And string, yes, string. Before she could forget, Clea fastened the end of the string from one name to another, sometimes pulling the string taut, sometimes too much and cursing while she refastened the string to the first card. Sometimes the string had to arc over other strings or droop down to the floor when she couldn't recall much more about the person. She used white string and blue, yellow and black. As she moved around the room, she'd glimpse a pattern and lose it again. She'd feel a momentum building and lose it to a long battle of weaving strings and cue cards and repositioning. These stories, these threads made graceful but solid, soft but structural. In this dream of making, the sun did not rise, and when Clea felt done enough to sit back into the archway to the dining room, she could not help but imagine herself a clever spinning thing, an ancient thread-generating incarnation, as if she did have 8 legs to smooth these lines throughout the room, as if she was blessed with many eyes, small and large, light-absorbing rows of them to take in the work of the room. With more practice, with more time, with more blessing ways, she could learn to weave this thing into funnels, orbs, or sheets, pull the loose bits tighter and adjust the corners. The family tree, she thought, how absurd, how unnatural, as if a branch of her bloodline could ever end, as if a tree was still a tree without sensing a forest, as if there could never be family in the treeless parts of the desert. Rather, this web, stronger than steel, but slight and delicate, a ballooning thing, a thing made and remade and recovered and made new throughout generations, and split generations and lost ones, folded ones, brightening ones, all. And the only thing prey to this pulsing system was that earlier version of Clea who built a photo ID area, an internment, that cold preservation of letters and numbers and attempts to capture the surface of a person, that fly, the resurrected census, a nothing process compared to the heavy dance of thread. Thank you.
Thank you, Natanya. That's the first time I've heard you read, which is terrible. Not the first time I've read your work, though, obviously. I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our last reader tonight, Paige Buffington. For those of you who joined us late, I introduced Paige earlier. She earned her MFA from Institute of American Indian Arts in 2015 and focused on poetry. She's published in numerous journals, including Literary Hub and the Taoist Journal of International Poetry and Art, as well as the narrative. Take it away, Paige.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. Yat a she Paige Buffington yin shia na shasha and slant bilagana bashichin. Ashihan dashiche bilagana dashanale. I'm reading to you from Gallup, New Mexico. I'm going to share 2 poems here. One is not in the anthology, but I'll finish with the one that is. So the first one is called Flood. It was New Year's Eve. Someone played an old country song our parents loved, their parents loved. I sang the psalms of the brokenhearted toward a jet black night. Hail water crawled down those red canyon walls, the crests of coal horses. I said, I don't drink this much. You're supposed to take care of me. My grandmother sang to fevered infants in hospitals. She took care of me. Quilts, skirts, cedar beads wrapped around a wrist, afternoon TV. I sank into the warm wings of her, squeezed into the narrow, dusty openings of memory. There are 10,000 ways a desert can gut you, 10,000 ways water finds the smallest openings to create a crack in the stone, a flash flood. She knew her heart was weakening. A snake rattles hidden in the brush. A blue jay lands on a man who fell asleep in the snow. I slept as you pressed your best shirts, packed a duffel. I watched you step onto a Greyhound headed to Prescott or somewhere south, headphones in, Cash singing that old country song our parents loved, their parents loved, listening with your head hanging low. Love, I waited for your call, watched dust glitter in sunbeams, searched for star maps in letters you wrote. I found your father, met him for coffee in Holbrook. He received and kept the postcard you sent from Las Vegas years ago. I drove deeper into desert, searched every bus station in Phoenix, glanced at each doormat for a boot print of Halchita, red, red. They heard a clicking in my heart once, said that I cried with each heavy rain. They told me to stop crying, to never chase after a man, to splash walls with herb water, to never keep his things around. A weakening, a flash, a flood, an absence, a horse's heart, a redstone beating. I kept the boots you left by the door, white linoleum stained with the vermilion dirt. Spring water runs red through canyons. It's been years since that new year. The desert flashes in lightning light, a juniper, white shells, swallows, the coal horses flash their teeth. Love, I've learned that my grandmother loved a man. I imagine him riding up on a dark horse, stirring the quail, walking up to the one-room house in a flower-printed pearl-buttoned shirt. I see her pouring him coffee, hair curled, jet black and shining, each willow opening with the desert's breathing. What did he do? Where was he from? Where did he go? He was from Utah, where red towers touched the blue, blue sky. He stopped coming around. We did not ask her about him. We heard he drowned in a mountain lake many years ago. Love, I still imagine jumping into the Pacific with you. I still see her waiting, watching the hills for a break in the landscape for a dark horse. I imagine you in a desert deeper than this one, pensive somewhere. I see you sitting in the short shade of a cedar tree. There are 10,000 ways the desert can gut you. 10,000 ways water finds the smallest openings to create a crack in the stone, a flash flood. You never looked at me and sang that old country song our parents loved, their parents loved. We never slow danced in a one-room house. Okay, and I'll finish with radio, and this is one of the 2 that I have in the anthology, and I just want to say a big giant ahiya to Esther, Connie, and Jeff. They really walked me through with such grace. It was also new to me, and I was like, sure, let's do it. And I didn't really know how beautiful this is and how proud I am of it, and to like be in a bookstore and to see my name among these names, it makes my heart burst. So thank you. Okay, I'll finish with radio. Grandma sat in the backmost room. The room caught the trailer's heat, the strongest signal. We unfolded chairs, stacked cardboard boxes, squeezed our smaller selves into the blanket-draped places, used crochet needles as microphones, pretended to be country stars. At times, we opened our arms to fly, shirts lifted, us spinning, showing our white bellies, just as the hawks did in our rectangle of the sky. We loved the language spilling from AM radio, all Navajo all the time and everything animal shaped. We crawled on all fours, held our breath until we turned blue. We peeked through moth and mouse holes in blankets, watched her stitch landscapes, palominos into pillowcases. We learned the mountain songs, her shuffle, traced the patterns her skirt left in floor dust, hummed to the sound of plastic lids peeling off plastic boxes, crawled until she caught our legs, pulled us against her while she cleaned our ears, blew the dead skin off the bobby pins, held us until she was sure her girls were listening. First, there was only a little static, a small snow. We were able to ignore it, collected restaurant suckers and made pictures with push pins, listened to old country and trucks kick up dust on the road, waited for new seasons. Sweat crawled down our temples, broke apart on shoulders and knees, stirring her from sleep. She asked for the names of family places, Bitter Springs and Red Mesa, listened closely, brown paper eyelids opened behind yellow lenses to make sure her girls were too. She yelled at small storms, trains, blamed the static on lost satellites. She said that it was getting worse, but we heard voices and words the same. Turn where white marks are carved into the edge. We rearranged furniture and dusted antennas, stood on the trailer's roof and raised our arms, mimicked telephone poles and radio towers, changed batteries, ran aluminum up corners along the ceiling. She made us take down the clubhouse, keep our bellies covered. I can't clean up after you girls anymore, and we unbraided our hair. We stopped searching for glass beads and buttons and started counting coughs, pink fingers just under her nose to make sure she was still breathing. We clung to everything we knew through the static: bingo, room, Tullawush, star, hospital, and north. A deep snow covered the satellites, and we thought of words we used to say.
Thank you so much, Paige. Thank you, Paige and Natanya and Esther, for reading and sharing some of your work from the anthology. It was just beautiful. It's been an incredible, beautiful process of working with either the estates of those who are no longer with us or directly with some of the 34 contributors to the anthology. It's been one of the most enriching experiences of my professional life. So I want to thank you and thank some of the other contributors that are joining us. I think I mentioned Jake earlier. I see we're now joined by Rachel Johnson. And a big congratulations to her. She graduated with her MFA in creative writing from University of New Mexico this past week. And then also a shout out hello to Tina Tischini, who's also a contributor to the anthology. I invite you, Jake, Rachel, and Tina, if you want to join in the discussion with Paige and Esther and Natanya. We'll take some questions now in the time that remains.
Okay, I'm going to turn my video back on. I can moderate any questions that you all have. I just wondered how, like, what was the conception of this? Like, what was the point where you said, we are going to put this anthology together? Did an editor come to you? Did you go to the press? Were you all sitting around at a conference with someone in the shower and just came up with the idea? Like, how did these threads converge to where a book came from this? Anyone?
Esther, do you want to share?
You can try to unmute. There we go.
Well, we all, I think once we were all in and realizing that this was a worthwhile project, yeah, I think that was the initial step. And I think one thing we didn't realize was the journey, the length, and the treasures that we would honestly find. I think the more we kept looking at the work and the older work and doing research, the more we unearthed about Navajo writers. And we just realized how enormous this project was. So, you know, we really took our time with it, and we worked independently, and then I think we sought out a few presses, and you know, we were really fortunate that the University of Arizona Press selected it.